Welcome back to another episode of Corralling the Chaos. Today, I want to talk about a word which might evoke some emotion one way or the other. And that word is labor. And my hope is at some point we can actually retire that word labor. And we're going to talk more about that today. And we've asked Anthony McCoy to join us today. It was really fun running into him at InfoComm, and we were kind of talking about this debate of talent versus labor. And I said, hey, you know what? Come on to our podcast. Let's talk about it together, because I think our industry is due to kind of discuss this topic. So thanks for joining us, Anthony.
Thank you. Thank you for having me very much. Yeah, happy to be here.
He has been in the industry well over a decade, doing all different sorts of things when it comes to event production. But Anthony, tell us a little bit about yourself and kind of how you got involved in this industry.
Sure. Always been a nerd at heart. And so I love tinkering and playing with cables and such. And so that plus me enjoying creative pursuits, this was a nice kind of trajectory for me. And so I've done everything from international touring to doing lighting and video direction at venues to project management to directing project managers and live events. And so it's something I'm definitely very passionate about.
Perfect. Well, thanks for joining today. So when we saw each other at InfoComm, I think you said, hey, I kind of feel the same way you do, Angela, when it comes to talent versus labor. And those two words evoke very different responses and have very different meanings. Yet in our industry, which is full of talent that pulls off these epic experiences, people are often referred to as labor. So how do you differentiate between the two?
Yeah. And I saw that real quick. I just saw that snippet in one of your newsletters that came out. And I've never seen anybody like that publicly say, like, we're calling them talent. So thank you for that. I think the professionals in our industry deserve that level of respect. But to answer your question, I think the differentiator is a passion for what they do and having a clear intention to grow. If somebody is a talent, somebody who takes their job seriously, who shows up early, who continues to develop their skills, not only on the clock, but off the clock, is seeking training or finding mentors, like that is taking this is a job. You know, this isn't just a bunch of people having fun. We can have fun on show site. A lot of times we do, but this is a career. And so take it seriously as such. And so seeing that passion and seeing that drive consistently, to me, defines talent versus labor.
Yeah, I love how you talk about that pursuit of professional growth and development. And I always think of it in terms of technical talent, right? Because you are learning skills, you're learning those sorts of things, but there's also non-technical talent, right? To your point, you don't have to be technical to be referred to as talent. It is still your craft, understanding an event run of show, understanding what needs to be happen, whether you're touching the boards or not, right? Still understanding how all of that works, understanding the stakes, the importance of being on time, the high stakes of doing it live, those sorts of things. Because to your point, it's not a job, it's a career. And so typically when you pursue a career, you are paying attention to, am I on time? Am I learning? Am I staying up to date? Am I listening? And am I observing? Am I asking questions versus...
Am I following the right mentors, right? Am I finding somebody that I want to, a good example, a good role model that I want to continue learning from? Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. So why don't you think the industry is talking more about talent versus labor? Because I've heard just the way people refer to labor, I've heard some highly offensive ways that they describe. Why is that?
I think that, in my opinion, from what I've seen, this is a very fast-paced industry, high pressure, high stress, and sometimes stuff needs to get done yesterday, depending on when we're at those levels of high volume. And so with that, it's just pumping through the checklist of what needs to happen for a successful show. Is the equipment here? What does that mean? That means all the equipment for lights, audio, and video. Cool. Is our logistics on site set up? That's everything from loaded schedule to truck dock reservation to venue contact information. And then with that is our labor secured? And that's just become like a very easy kind of like catch-all to just say like, hey, do we have all the necessary people who are very talented and have been doing their craft for decades to get to this level of professionalism scheduled for the show? And do they have the necessary information to be successful? of the show. But I think it's just so fast paced to where it's like, is the labor done? Are we good? We're there? Cool. Awesome. Next thing. And with that too, this is a relatively young industry, and as far as how it's becoming more and more professional. And in some ways it's very exciting. It's like the voice of like you, Angela, could be like the trailblazer that breaks this through, because this is such the Wild West, which is very, very cool. But with that, there's a lot of like learning, I feel like that's still there, a lot of opportunity for learning and refinement and just treating people better. We're all still human beings doing this, you know, and most, especially after the pandemic really made a lot of people leave this industry, a lot of fantastic and very talented people. But the people, in my opinion, that are still here post-pandemic want to be here. And they want to be here because they're good at what they do. They have a passion for it. And I think they deserve that level of respect.
What does treating them better look like?
I think it's just, well, first off, changing the nomenclature is a really good step as far as talent. I said this before we started recording, but like, I wouldn't call LeBron James just like labor. Like, he's a talent. He's been working on his craft for decades, right? And so same thing for our people. And so to make that more tangible, I think it's treating them like a human being, not putting them in situations to where they're firefighters, although some of us are very good at that in live events, but setting them up for success. What information can you get in advance? What preparation can we do during the pre-production process to help them get what they need to walk in the room already knowing 75% of what's going to happen that day? Like that's a big step in that. Secondly, investing in them, talking to them. What do you like doing? Do you even like doing video? What is your focus? What makes you feel excited? And then pushing that forward another step to career advancement. There's all kinds of great training opportunities that are like actual certifications that people learn so much great information from all over the US and even internationally too. And so I think it's huge for us to invest in people just like any of these large tech companies would. They would invest in their employees from a training perspective, for focusing on their work-life balance, focusing on treating them like a human being. And I think bringing those same, like this is happening already in other industries. You know what I mean? We're not having to figure out like, oh, how do you take care of employees? Like, no, people are figuring this out in other industries. Just bring it here, make it more normalized.
Do you feel like at Show Site there is a clear distinction between technical talent and non-technical talent?
I do think there is, yes. And if I'm going to call somebody talent, then to me, that's a two-way street. Like, don't prove me wrong. If I'm going to say like, you are a talent, like Angela, you are a talented projectionist, for example, like, don't prove me wrong. Like, do your pre-production, show up early, be ready to go, command the room, lead your department, and push that forward. If somebody were to, I don't care what certifications you have, if you show up late, you're not dressed to impress, you don't know what's going on, you haven't done your homework, that's not professional. And so if I'm going to call you a talent, bring it back that way. So one, I think it's that two-way respect to give people. And seeing on Show Site, I think just some people don't have the opportunity to have that kind of leadership in their career. Somebody to pull them aside and say, what do you enjoy doing? And there might be just aimlessly walking around the ballroom, just like they told me to show up here and push cases around, which is great. That's how I started. But at a certain point, you as an individual have to ask yourself, do I want to just be this guy who's doing this consistently? And that's fine if you do, but having some clarity and some intention on what you want out of this. And there are many people that do live events just strictly for financial because they need to have money coming in. Respect that entirely. That's totally fine. But that's different to me than somebody who is reading books by Richard Cadena on lighting and power spec, who's going to certifications at Nationwide, who's trying to get tickets to InfoComm because they want to see the latest and greatest. Like, be that person that is proactive.
Yeah. We always say, be the person that the person you're looking for is looking for. So it's like, if you're looking to get on with a company who's investing in their people, be the person that company's looking for, right? So that way they see you stand out, those sorts of things. So I think that's an important part. You know, one thing that's always baffled me that I hope our industry eventually gets to the point where we do retire that word labor. Because at the end of the day, companies are selling their talent. They're not selling their gear. It's a commodity. They're selling what they do with the gear, their attention to detail, the creativity, the vision, the execution. All of that is related to your people, not your gear. But yet, for whatever reason, every quote that we see, people refer to that huge portion of that quote or proposal as labor. And it's just always baffled me why you wouldn't call that out as talent. Like, really sell it for what it is. These are not warm bodies. It's not labor. It's not just putting somebody on a line and they just go through the motions. And so when you think about selling value of a show, to me, it is all about the talent. And we, even in our system in LASSO's quoting and proposal system, we literally made that. That was just important to me when our product team was developing that. Was I wanted our customers to be able to call that whatever they want. And we're encouraging them to say talent, but everyone's still stuck on labor. And to me, it's much easier to defend a price point when you're positioning your team as talent and not bodies and not labor.
You have a really good point too. A warehouse full of top of the line industry leading gear is nothing without talented technicians to execute that.
Well, from your experience, how do event companies often misunderstand the roles of talent versus labor?
I think it's undervaluing skill sets that they may have grown accustomed to, or just maybe not a full understanding of how complex some of these systems truly are on site. I've heard from various people in the industry, like, oh, how hard can it be? Just get some projectors up in the air and get them all touching together and make it happen. Well, that's a 6 projector blend. Your image is over 8K in resolution across. You got to do math on that. You have to figure out the resolution. You have to make custom content for that. What surface are you projecting on? Are the projectors bright enough? What's their placement? What's their lensing? Like, these are all just like, there's so much to take into account there when you're doing that. And so I think what it is there is kind of, I've noticed with some individuals, this idea that it's just like, oh, we can make it happen. The gear's in the room, got the people there. We can make this happen. You need the right people there. The right people that can, in a funny way, save you money by spending more money on the front end with them. You can bring somebody who's a professional in that knows what they're doing, and they really are there because they know what they're doing. They can save you money on the back end from not having to. That could be anything from having overages with time cards to where people have to stay later, to where the client is upset. Hey, we had a 4 o'clock rehearsal and it's 6 o'clock now. I see no video. What's going on? That's a really tough pill to swallow and a much more expensive pill to swallow than getting the right person in on the front. And so I think they kind of go in tandem as far as giving more respect to our contractors in the industry, calling them talent, giving them resources to grow, more education, more certifications, so they can be those dynamite lead technicians on site, to where they are talented, to where anybody walks in the room and says, holy crap, it's lunch and we have working video. Okay. All right, cool. This guy was worth it. This makes sense,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you get what you pay for. Don't cut corner. Pay your people, pay them what they're worth, pay them well.
Exactly. And treat them well, too. Treat them well. I think there is another branch here, too, to where I've worked in all aspects of production, and in some pockets, it does feel like people are a bit disposable. And as far as people that are there, it's sad. I don't think that should be the case, because these are people that are there to work. And I truly, firmly believe that 99% of people wake up in the morning and say, I want to do a good job today, like what I'm doing. I sure those edge cases of people that say, I can't wait to burn this thing down. But I don't believe that. I think that's very, very rare. Most people want to wake up and do well. So give them the resources to do well, and not just say you're out of here because of A, B, and C. Well, why did they make a mistake? Have you spoken to them? Pull them aside. Can you coach them? They need more training. Maybe they don't simply know. Maybe this is their first event of this nature they're at, and it's just giving them some grace there to understand that. And I'm not saying to compromise the show. There is a teeter-totter here, right? And that's difficult. And that's the role of a good manager, in my opinion, to be able to read the individual, read the situation, and judge that risk. But people need to be put in situations to where they can stretch their wings and fly a bit with the right kind of coaching.
Yeah, you've got to have the right balance in your career, right? You can't have everybody that needs coaching. You've got to have the strong ones, right? That you're betting on, and then those that are just going to learn and they're not going to learn, to your point, unless they're there.
But give them an opportunity, though. That's my thing. Give them an opportunity and just touch base with them and see what they need to be successful.
I do want to talk about the flip side of this, though, because I know companies also struggle with very high-end talent, and they all know that, many of them know that they are very high-end and feel that they are not replaceable. And so their egos, their attitudes, those sorts of things come through. And yes, they are talented, but I like your take on it, that talent doesn't just mean skill set, right? It's a mentality. And if you're showing up like you're king, you've been doing this forever, you're the unicorn in the room, that's not what we're talking about either, right? That's ego. That's not talent. So I do think there's a place for that too, that just because you have the skill set also doesn't make you talent.
Agreed. I think that's true for any industry. It's just working with somebody who doesn't play well with others. Like, nobody wants that. I mean, I've been around those individuals before and they are very talented, but I'm willing to bet, I can't speak for everybody here, but myself personally, I'd rather have somebody who has a better attitude, who whenever it's 1 or 2 in the morning and we're cranking out this projection blend that we're doing, they're the ones keeping the team positive and moving, than the guy who's going to have the complete opposite approach to it, regardless of how talented they are. I think attitude and an approach on site is a huge part of that talent definition.
So what can companies do to foster building talent and less labor?
Recognizing that their people are their most important asset. Gear is gear. Gear is expensive and very necessary. You can't have a show without gear. Duh. But like we just mentioned, if you have a warehouse full of the nicest equipment you could imagine, it's nothing without the technicians. And so realizing that the people are, in my opinion, are the biggest just asset to a company, and investing in them, continuing to do training, continuing to do coaching, and seeing them more as a human-to-human level. I think it takes much more time, much more difficult to do. I get that. How easy would it be to just be like, cool, we got 30 bodies in the room, they can make the show happen. No, there's more involved in that. Welcome to a career. Welcome to life. Welcome to work. That's what it is. So I think just as just as companies are expecting their contractor pool, their talent to buck up and make it happen, I think that it can be flipped around to where it's like, hey, managers, can you buck up and make it happen? And give your people what they need. So I think that's more resources in education. That's more one-on-one time with them to find out what they're about, what they might need, what makes them tick. For all you know, somebody's upset and underperforming because they don't want to be doing audio anymore. I don't, just talk to them and see. And you might find out, oh goodness, you actually have a huge passion for lighting. What are we doing? Let's get you on some more lighting calls to find out what you like. And just learning more about the humanity piece of it. And then also just, it's a tough industry. We've all been in positions to where we're working hours far later than most people do in other industries, to where you have to just, buck up and make it happen. But recognizing that and appreciating that, I think, are huge. And not having that just be the norm, to where it's, oh yeah, you worked, 9 16-hour days back to back to back. Good for you. Awesome. See you in the office on Monday. It's like, well, geez, can we at least acknowledge? And I don't mean just like a pizza party and cookies, but like call them. Hey, Angela, thank you so much for doing this. I know this was hard. Are you okay? Have you slept since then? Just treat them like people. And so I think that can go a long way. And again, there's a balance here. We have to be able to still expect them to deliver, but still treat them like a human being. But there is some development I think it needs to happen on the front end to get them to that point.
Well, this is a fun topic always for me to talk about. So I'm glad you wanted to come on and talk about it. My challenge for our listeners and for our industry is just change out the words, right? Don't call your labor coordinator a labor coordinator. How about we call him a talent coordinator? Instead of a labor call, maybe it's a talent call. Instead of the line item on your proposal, instead of labor, maybe it's talent, right? So let's start as an industry replacing those words, and let's see if you're not able to sell at a higher rate because you're positioning your company as providing talent, not labor. Let's see if you see your people begin to step up, take more pride in what they're doing because you're referring to them as talent, not labor. I just think it's such an important call out because people in our industry, they're not making $10 an hour. So it's not labor.
People have mortgages, they have kids, they have daycare to pay for. These are careers.
That's right. So that would be my challenge to our industry is anytime we see the word labor, just start saying talent and let's see what changes as a result of that. Any challenges from your side that you want to challenge our industry with when it comes to anything related to this?
Oh man, I love accountability. So I think two-way accountability would be a thing to where first looking at yourself as a company, looking at yourself first. Well, we dropped the ball on this because of A, B, and C. Before hopping on to those on site, wait a minute, did we set them up for success? What was that pre-production timeline like? Was it too condensed? Do some internal review first to see how you can then scale. Because if you're just banking on having dynamite technicians and dynamite engineers and talent on site to just save you time and time again, that's not scalable. We need to have systems in place that empower our talent to then take that next step. And so I think that'd be my challenge to how can I have that mirror placed to look back and say, how can we revamp our systems to help our talent be more successful?
Well, that's a great takeaway. I hope all the teams out there spend time in your next Monday morning meeting thinking about what are we doing as an organization to respect our team, show them that we respect them, and how can we kind of change our vernacular as well. So I think these are all great call outs. I appreciate you joining, Anthony. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Of course. And thank you for having me.
Yeah. And for our listeners, if you enjoyed what you hear, be sure you hit subscribe and feel free to reach out to us with any comments or feedback at podcast@lasso.io. Thanks, everyone.